The Midnight Guardian. The gravel crunched beneath James Whitmore's boots as he made his final round of Blackwood Manor. 3 months into his job as night security, and he still couldn't shake the feeling that the sprawling estate watched him as much as he watched over it. The moon hung full and bright, casting long shadows across the manicured gardens and illuminating the West Wing's Gothic architecture, where Olivia Blackwood, sole heiress to the Blackwood fortune, kept herself sequestered. James checked his watch. 11:58 p.m. Right on schedule, the soft click of locks engaging echoed through the corridor. Every night, without fail, Miss Blackwood secured her quarters precisely 2 minutes before midnight. The household staff whispered about her peculiar habits, how she took meals alone, communicated only through handwritten notes, and ventured outside only during the darkest hours of night to walk the gardens. "Just doing my job, Miss Blackwood," James murmured to the empty hallway, tipping his cap toward the sealed double doors. He was about to continue his patrol when a sound stopped him. A melody, hauntingly beautiful but fragile, drifting from behind those locked doors. James had heard it before, always faint, always after midnight. The staff said Miss Blackwood played piano when she believed everyone was asleep. Tonight, though, the music ended abruptly, replaced by something that froze James in place. Quiet, unmistakable weeping. "Everything all right in there?" The words left his mouth before he could stop them. The crying ceased immediately. Silence stretched between them until a voice, soft but clear, responded, "You're new." Not a question, but an observation. James cleared his throat. "James Whitmore, ma'am. Night security for the past 3 months." 3 months. The voice paused. "And yet this is the first time you've spoken to me." "Didn't seem my place," James replied honestly. "Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper, she was very clear about respecting your privacy." A bitter laugh came from beyond the door. "Everyone in this house is very good at respecting my privacy, Mr. Whitmore. Too good, perhaps." James shifted uncomfortably. At 42, after 15 years in the police force and another 5 in private security, he'd developed an instinct for people in distress. Something in Miss Blackwood's voice triggered that alarm. "Would you like me to call someone for you, Miss Blackwood?" "There is no one to call," she answered, her voice suddenly distant. "Good night, Mr. Whitmore." But James hesitated, remembering what brought him to this job. After his wife Eleanor died 3 years ago, he'd promised himself he wouldn't walk away from someone in pain again. He'd ignored Eleanor's symptoms, convinced himself she was just overworked. By the time they caught the cancer, it was too late. "I'll be making rounds every hour," he said firmly. "If you need anything at all, I'll hear you." No response came, but James didn't expect one. He continued his patrol, but his thoughts remained fixed on the lonely heiress and her nightly ritual of locks and tears. At 35, Olivia Blackwood controlled a technology empire worth billions, yet she lived like a prisoner in her own home. The gossip among staff painted contradictory pictures. Some claimed she was disfigured in an accident. Others whispered about mental instability following her parents' deaths 5 years ago. The truth, James suspected, was something else entirely. When he passed by her wing again at 2 a.m., the mansion was silent. But as dawn approached, James discovered something that broke the pattern. A small folded note slipped beneath the service entrance door. In elegant handwriting, it read, "Some doors are locked to keep others out. Some are locked to keep memories in. Which do you think mine are, Mr. Whitmore?" James tucked the note into his pocket, his resolve hardening. Something was very wrong at Blackwood Manor, and perhaps he was the only one willing to find out what. Shadows of the past, James found himself increasingly preoccupied with Olivia Blackwood's cryptic note in the days that followed. The heiress's question haunted him. Which doors was she truly locking? Those to keep others out, or those to keep memories contained? During his daytime hours, James began researching the Blackwood family history. The public library's archives revealed the skeleton of a dynasty. Harrison Blackwood had transformed a small tech startup into Blackwood Industries, a global giant specializing in security systems and data protection. The irony wasn't lost on James. the daughter of a security magnate living behind perpetually locked doors. News articles from 7 years ago documented the company's most controversial achievement: a government contract for surveillance technology that made the Blackwoods billions but sparked privacy debates worldwide. In every photo from that period, Olivia stood beside her father, impeccably dressed in business attire, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. Then, abruptly, she vanished from public view. She was different before, Mrs. Winters told James one evening as he arrived for his shift. The housekeeper rarely engaged in gossip, making her willingness to speak now all the more significant. Used to laugh, host charity events, bring life to this mausoleum. What changed her? James asked, feigning casual interest. Mrs. Winters glanced around before lowering her voice. It was that summer before Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood's accident. Miss Olivia went to the company's research facility in Switzerland, came back a different person entirely. A month later, her parents died in that yacht explosion, and she locked herself away. That night, James heard the piano again, but this time he recognized the piece, Chopin's Nocturne in C-sharp minor, a composition of profound melancholy. When the music stopped, he knocked gently on her door. "It's beautiful," he said. "My wife used to play that same piece." A long silence followed. "Used to? She passed. Cancer 3 years ago." Another pause. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Whitmore." "James," he corrected. "And thank you." The conversation might have ended there, but James took a risk. "I found a photograph today in the library archives. You were opening a children's hospital wing. You looked happy." "You've been investigating me." Her voice hardened. "Just trying to understand. Why? What possible difference could it make to you?" James considered his answer carefully. "Because I recognize grief when I hear it, Miss Blackwood." "And isolation only makes it worse." The door opened just an inch, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. "You presume too much?" "Maybe," James acknowledged. "But I also know that when Eleanor died, I pushed everyone away. Convinced myself I was protecting my privacy when really I was just afraid of more pain." The door opened wider, and James saw Olivia Blackwood clearly for the first time. She was thinner than in the photographs, her dark hair now streaked with premature silver, but her eyes remained striking, intelligent and wary. No visible scars or disfigurements, just the unmistakable marks of prolonged sorrow. "My parents didn't die in an accident," she said flatly. "It was targeted. Because of what we discovered." "What did you discover?" Olivia's gaze seemed to look through him. "That we had created a monster. That our technology was being used to hunt people who opposed certain powerful interests. My father was going to expose everything." She laughed bitterly. "So much for that. And you've been hiding ever since?" "Protecting what's left," she corrected. "There was someone else, someone they took from me first. When I tried to find him," her voice broke. "They made it very clear what would happen if I didn't disappear quietly with my family's secrets." "This someone," James ventured. "Who was he?" Olivia stepped back into the shadows. "His name was Thomas Reed. He was a journalist investigating military applications of our technology. We became close. Then one day, he simply vanished. All records of him, gone. It was as if he never existed." The door began to close, but James placed his hand against it. "Let me help you." "You can't," she whispered. "No one can. I have resources, contacts from my police days. If Thomas Reed existed, there will be traces." Olivia shook her head. "You'll only put yourself in danger." "I've been in danger before," James replied. "Some things are worth the risk." As he turned to leave, Olivia called after him. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" James thought of Eleanor, of all the things left unsaid between them. "Because everyone deserves a chance to finish their story, Miss Blackwood. Even you." The door closed, locks engaging one by one, but something had changed. A connection had formed, tenuous but real, between the grieving security guard and the imprisoned heiress. As James continued his rounds, he knew he had crossed a line from which there was no returning. Whatever secrets Blackwood Manor held, he was now irrevocably entangled in them. The forgotten promise James spent his days off pursuing the ghost of Thomas Reed. His former partner on the force, Detective Gabriela Ortiz, was skeptical but agreed to help access records that might otherwise be unavailable to him. Missing persons reports, old press credentials, tax records, nothing. Gabriela reported over coffee at a diner far from Blackwood Manor. "It's like your journalist friend was scrubbed from the system." "That's exactly what she said would happen," James replied, frustration evident in his voice. "There is one thing, though." Gabriela slid a thin folder across the table. 6 years ago, a body washed up on the coast near the Blackwoods private marina. Male, mid-30s, no identification. The case went cold, but... She tapped a photograph of the corpse's hand. "This ring. University of Columbia, School of Journalism." James studied the image. Could be him, or could be nothing. Body was cremated after 90 days, standard procedure for unclaimed remains. Gabriela leaned forward. "James, what are you really doing? This woman's family has connections that could crush you without a thought." "I'm keeping a promise," he said, thinking of Eleanor, "to not walk away from someone who needs help." Over the next weeks, James pieced together fragments of Thomas Reed's existence through old bylines and university records. Reed had specialized in corporate whistleblower stories, with a particular focus on military contractors. His last published piece had questioned the ethics of Blackwood Industries' government partnerships, 3 weeks before he disappeared. More telling was what James discovered in Switzerland. Using vacation time and savings he could ill afford to spend, he traveled to the Blackwood Research Facility in the Alps. There, a retired security guard named Heinrich recognized photos of both Olivia and Thomas. They were here together. "Yes," Heinrich confirmed in halting English. "Very much in love, I think." But then came the men in suits, not Blackwood people. Government, maybe. There was shouting, and the young man was taken away. Miss Blackwood, she was crying, fighting to stop them. "What happened after?" Heinrich's weathered face darkened. The next day, Mr. Blackwood arrived. He and his daughter argued terribly. She showed him something on her computer, turned his face white as snow. They left together that same night. 2 days later, the Blackwood yacht exploded off the coast of Monaco, killing Harrison Blackwood and his wife, Evelyn. The official investigation ruled it an accident, faulty fuel line. James returned to Blackwood Manor with a clearer picture. During his nightly conversations with Olivia, now conducted through her still-locked door, he shared his findings. "Thomas uncovered something about your technology," James theorized. "Something dangerous enough that powerful people needed to silence him." "Not just about the technology." Olivia's voice was hollow. "About who was using it and why. Thomas found evidence that our surveillance systems were being deployed against American citizens, political activists, journalists, even judges who ruled against certain interests. When he showed me his evidence, I couldn't believe it." "So you confronted your father?" "I wanted to believe he didn't know." Her voice cracked. "He claimed he didn't at first. Then he admitted everything. Said it was necessary for national security, that some compromises had to be made. When I threatened to go public alongside Thomas, he..." She trailed off. "He what, Olivia?" "He promised he would fix it. Said he'd help me find Thomas and make things right. We were on the yacht, heading to meet a contact who could supposedly help us, when the explosion happened." Her voice hardened. "It wasn't an accident." "And you've been hiding ever since, afraid they'd come for you, too." "Not just hiding," Olivia corrected. "Searching. Every night I use the very systems my father built to look for traces of Thomas or his evidence. I've found fragments, but never enough to move against them openly." James considered this. "Heinrich, the guard in Switzerland, he thinks Thomas may still be alive." A sharp intake of breath came from beyond the door. "What?" "He said Thomas was taken away, not killed. And the body found near your marina. The timing fits, but I'm not convinced it's him." For the first time since their conversations began, Olivia opened her door fully. Her eyes burned with an intensity that transformed her face. "I need to show you something," she said, gesturing for him to enter her sanctuary. The room beyond was nothing like James had imagined. One entire wall was covered with monitors displaying data streams, satellite images, and surveillance footage. Another held hundreds of index cards connected by colored strings, a physical manifestation of Olivia's investigation. "This is why I lock my doors," she explained, indicating the elaborate setup. "I've been tracking their movements, their communications. And this," she pointed to a monitor showing a secure medical facility, "is where I believe they might be holding Thomas, or at least storing information about what happened to him." James stared at the screen. "That's a black site. Government facility. How do you plan to access it?" Olivia turned to him, her expression resolute. "I don't, but you could." Crossing boundaries, the Princeton Neurological Research Center appeared unremarkable from the outside, a nondescript building nestled among similar structures in a corporate park. According to Olivia's intelligence, beneath its legitimate medical research floors lay a classified facility where the government conducted memory and behavioral experiments on volunteers. "Your credentials are solid," Olivia assured James through the secure communication device she'd provided. Her voice was steady, betraying none of the anxiety she must have felt. "The system shows you as Dr. Richard Bell, scheduled to inspect their security protocols." James adjusted his tie, uncomfortable in the tailored suit that had been delivered to his apartment that morning. "And if they decide to verify directly with the agency?" "They won't. I've created digital tripwires that would alert us to any such attempt." The past 3 weeks had transformed James's understanding of Olivia Blackwood. Behind her locked doors, she wasn't just hiding, she was waging a private war against forces that had destroyed her life and possibly Thomas Reed's. Her technical brilliance was matched only by her determination. "Remember," she continued, "you're only there to access their internal network. The data extraction program will do the rest." The security at the entrance was thorough but perfunctory. James's forged credentials passed inspection, and he was escorted to the security office where he was to begin his audit. Once alone, he inserted Olivia's specially designed drive into a workstation and waited the prescribed 90 seconds for the program to deploy. "I'm in," he murmured into his communication device. "Now what?" "Now we wait," Olivia replied. "The program needs 4 minutes to map their system and locate any information about Thomas." Those 4 minutes stretched interminably. James made a show of examining security logs, aware of cameras monitoring his movements. When the drive blinked green, indicating completion, he smoothly removed it and continued his pretend inspection. He was almost to the exit when alarms blared. "James, run!" Olivia's voice was urgent in his ear. "They've detected the intrusion." Security personnel converged from all directions. James abandoned subtlety, sprinting toward the emergency exit. He burst through the door into the parking lot, only to find himself surrounded by armed guards. "Dr. Bell, or whoever you really are," a cold voice announced. A tall woman in a charcoal suit approached, her expression calculating. "I believe you have something that belongs to us." James raised his hands slowly. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just here to perform a scheduled security audit." The woman smiled thinly. "An audit that somehow attempted to access files on Project Mnemosyne?" "I think not." She extended her hand. "The drive, please." James weighed his options. The drive was encrypted. Olivia had assured him of that, but in their hands it might still lead back to her. "James." Olivia's voice was calm in his ear. "Give it to them." "It's a decoy." Reluctantly, James surrendered the drive. "Now, let's discuss who sent you," the woman continued, gesturing toward the building. "I believe I can answer that," a new voice interrupted. James turned to see a distinguished man in his 60s approaching, flanked by men in dark suits who were clearly federal agents. "Director Calloway," the woman acknowledged, visibly surprised. "We weren't expecting you until next week. Plans change." "Dr. Foster." The director's gaze fixed on James, especially when old ghosts resurface. Back at Blackwood Manor, Olivia paced her control room, frantic as her communication with James went silent. Hours passed with no word. She was preparing to implement her emergency protocols when her security system alerted her to vehicles approaching the main gate. Government vehicles. Olivia quickly initiated her data purge sequence, watching as years of research began erasing itself. Whatever happened next, she wouldn't let them use her work against others. As footsteps echoed in the corridor outside her rooms, she unlocked her door for the first time in years and stepped into the hallway. Director Calloway stood there, alongside James, unharmed but grim-faced. "Miss Blackwood," Calloway greeted her. "It seems we have much to discuss. Where's Thomas?" she demanded, ignoring formalities. "That's complicated," the director replied. "And the reason I've come personally rather than sending a tactical team." "May we sit down?" In her private study, Calloway explained the truth that had been hidden for 6 years. Thomas Reed had indeed uncovered dangerous misuse of Blackwood technology, but by a rogue faction within the intelligence community, not the government itself. "Your father discovered the same corruption," Calloway revealed. "He came to me directly, bypassing the compromised channels. We were working together to expose the conspiracy when his yacht was sabotaged." "And Thomas?" Olivia's voice trembled. Calloway hesitated. "He was taken to the facility you targeted today. Not as a prisoner initially, but for protection. Then there was an incident, an attempt on his life that left him severely injured." "Brain damage?" "You're saying he's alive?" James interjected. "Physically, yes. But his memories, his identity." Calloway shook his head. "Project Mnemosyne was an experimental treatment to restore him. The results have been limited." Olivia stood abruptly. "Take me to him. Now." Hours later, in a secure medical facility very different from the Princeton Center, Olivia stood outside a room where a man sat by a window, painting landscapes with remarkable skill but vacant eyes. "We call him Robert now," the attending physician explained gently. "He doesn't remember being Thomas Reed, but some part of him remembers you. He paints the same woman in different settings. Always you, Miss Blackwood." When Olivia entered the room, Thomas Robert looked up, his expression curious but unrecognizing. Yet, as she approached, his hand reached for hers with the certainty of muscle memory that transcended conscious thought. "I don't know you," he said softly, "but my heart does." Breaking the chains, 6 months transformed Blackwood Manor from a fortress of solitude into a sanctuary of healing. The West Wing, once locked and forbidding, now housed a specialized rehabilitation center where Thomas Reed, gradually reclaiming his identity from the shell of Robert, worked. With neurologists and memory specialists, Olivia had thrown herself into his recovery with the same intensity that had fueled her years of investigation. Every evening she read to him from his old journals and articles, played music they had once shared, and showed him photographs of their time together, each stimulus carefully chosen to rebuild neural pathways destroyed by trauma. It's like assembling a puzzle without knowing the final picture. Dr. Levinson, the lead neurologist, explained to James during one of his frequent visits. "Some pieces snap into place easily, others may never fit again. But the brain is remarkably adaptable." Thomas's progress came in unexpected bursts. He might not remember his own birthday, but could recite entire passages from investigations he'd conducted. His feelings for Olivia returned before his memories of her, an emotional recognition that preceded cognitive recall. "I dream about you," he told her one evening as they walked the gardens that had once been her only respite. "Not memories, I don't think, just possibilities. Us in places we've never been." Olivia squeezed his hand. "Perhaps they're places we'll go, not places we've been." The conspiracy that had destroyed their lives continued unraveling under Director Calloway's investigation. 12 officials had been indicted, including 3 high-ranking intelligence officers and a cabinet undersecretary. The Blackwood technologies that had been weaponized against citizens were being dismantled or repurposed with rigorous oversight. For James, the resolution brought both satisfaction and uncertainty. His role at the manor had expanded from security guard to trusted confidant. But as Thomas improved and the immediate dangers faded, he questioned his place in their story. "You're thinking of leaving," Olivia observed one evening, finding him on the terrace overlooking the grounds. In the distance, Thomas worked in the garden that had become his therapy. James nodded. "My job here is done, is it?" She joined him at the railing. "You did more than find Thomas, James. You helped me find myself again." "You'd have gotten there eventually," he demurred. "You're too stubborn not to." Olivia smiled, a genuine expression that still seemed new on her face. Perhaps, but not without scars that might never have healed. She hesitated. "I've been meaning to ask you something." From her pocket, she withdrew a small, weathered photograph, James and Eleanor on their wedding day, his police hat tipped rakishly, her smile radiant beneath a simple veil. "Where did you get this?" James asked, taking the photo with reverent hands. "From your apartment? When we were preparing for the Princeton operation? I hope you don't mind." Olivia's expression softened. She was beautiful. "Yes," James agreed, his throat tight. "She was." "You told me once that everyone deserves to finish their story," Olivia continued. "What about yours, James? Is this how Eleanor would want it to end? With you alone, defining yourself solely through other people's happiness?" The question struck with gentle precision. Since Eleanor's death, James had existed rather than lived, finding purpose only in Olivia's crusade. "I don't know how to start over," he admitted. "Neither did I," Olivia reminded him. "Neither does Thomas. Yet here we are." She placed a hand on his arm. "The foundation needs a security director, someone who understands both protection and redemption." The Blackwood Foundation had been Olivia's response to the revelations about her family's technology. Dedicated to protecting privacy rights and supporting victims of surveillance abuse, it would transform her family legacy from one of exploitation to empowerment. "You don't need to answer now," she added. "But know that there's a place for you here, not as an employee, but as family. The kind we choose, not the kind we're born into." As sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Thomas joined them, carrying a small canvas. Without speaking, he presented it to James, a painting of Eleanor based on the wedding photograph, but with an ethereal quality that captured something beyond physical likeness. "She visits you," Thomas said simply, in the space between thoughts. "I see her sometimes, watching over you." James stared at the painting, emotion welling in his chest. "How could you know how she looked?" Thomas shook his head, still struggling to articulate the intuitive understanding that had replaced his analytical mind. Not looked, felt, how she felt to you. That night, for the first time since arriving at Blackwood Manor, James dreamed of Eleanor, not as she was in her final days, but vibrant and whole, walking through a garden he didn't recognize. "You found your way," she told him, her voice as clear as if she stood beside him. "Now find your future." James woke with tears on his face, but lightness in his heart. At breakfast, he found Olivia and Thomas reviewing architectural plans for the Foundation's headquarters. "The security director should have input on the design," he said, pulling up a chair, "if you're still offering the position." Olivia's smile was answer enough. Thomas, having one of his lucid mornings, raised a toast with his orange juice. The locked doors finally opened. As James clinked his coffee mug against their glasses, he reflected on the strange path that had led him here. He had come to Blackwood Manor seeking nothing more than quiet nights and the solitude of grief. Instead, he had found purpose, connection, and the possibility of joy, not by forgetting his past, but by allowing it to guide him